Hey everyone, thanks for watching. In this video I'm going to talk about how Canada is in fact not a sovereign nation, but in fact still a British colony. Alright, so what we're going to talk about basically is, well, we're going to start all the way back in the 15th century when French and English were both colonizing the New World, right? You had the British colony of Canada, which is Ontario and West. Pretty much just the lower portion of Ontario at the time. You had the colony of New France, which is present-day Quebec, but it was New France. That was a French colony, and that was pretty much just the one little strip of land that runs up along the U.S. border, right? Which connected with what is now New Brunswick, which was actually part of Nova Scotia at the time. So you had the Atlantic colony, as they called it, but they called it Nova Scotia or New Scotland, which consisted of what is present day Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Okay, so you had the three big colonies there, and British one on either side, and French one in the middle. Well, after the end of the 7 Years' War between the UK and France, France conceded the colony of New France to the UK. And the United Kingdom changed the name to Quebec. It became the colony of Quebec. By this point in time, New Brunswick had become its own colony, and Nova Scotia still consisted of Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia were still considered Nova Scotia. So that had broken up a little bit. Later on through the years, in 1867, with what they call Confederation, which is supposedly when Canada became its own country, right? You basically had a merger of these three colonies that became known as the Dominion of Canada, okay? And it basically consisted of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Ontario. And I don't believe Ontario was called Ontario at the time. I'm not 100% sure what it was being called, right? So, the history books would tell you that Canada is a sovereign nation and that it is not under British rule at all. That it is and this is their words, a constitutional monarchy democracy with the Queen as the head of state. She's also the queen of 15 other constitutional monarchies, the British colonies, right? Which were, well, they call them the Commonwealth, countries of the Commonwealth now. They're colonies. Okay, let's face the fact. And I'm gonna make some really good points here as I go through. So, what are some things that prove my point? Well, let's start with something as simple as the Queen's face being on the $20 bill. Her face is on our money. Okay? Pretty big indicator right there. When you look at a Canadian naval ship, you'll see the letters HMCS, which stand for Her Majesty's or His Majesty's, if it's a king at the time, but at present it's HMCS, Her Majesty's Canadian Ship. It's not just Canadian ship, it's Her Majesty's Canadian Ship. All of these things mean something when you look at them. And when you understand the history and you actually follow through, not just reading the school history books, but you do a little digging independently. You also have the fact that to this day, a small percentage, and I don't know what the percentage is, it's like 0.5% or 0.25%. It's like very, very, very small. But a small amount of all federal taxes collected in the colony of Canada are sent directly to the British Crown. Okay? Which is exactly the way monarchies operate. I mean, where else do you think these guys are getting billions of dollars, right? They don't have jobs. I mean, some of them have honorary commissions in the Navy, but do they actually serve in the Navy? I'm not sure. If they do, you know, they're getting paid a Navy salary, right? That's not enough to pay for all those palaces and whatnot. And of course, yeah, I know Britain just, gives it to them, right? Because they're the royal family. But these people are loaded. Their net worth is billions of dollars, right? And they get richer every year. So that money's coming from somewhere. And like I said, none of them have jobs. So the money's coming from somewhere. Well, it's coming from all the taxes they're collecting from not just Britain, the UK, but the 15 other colonies, right? And then you look at the fact that the Queen is actually the head of state of Canada, not the Prime Minister. The Queen, where she's not physically in Canada, has a representative in Canada called the Governor General. Now, the Governor General is an appointed position, and the Governor General is appointed by the Queen at the recommendation of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will say, hey, I think you should appoint this person. The Queen will say yes or no. She usually says yes. It's a 5-year appointed term. Sometimes it goes as long as 7. And the Governor General acts on behalf of the Queen in the colony and has the power to shut down government. He can shut down Parliament. Or she can. For the sake of the video, I'm going to say he, but it could be a woman, right? But he has the power to shut down government whenever he sees fit, if he feels that Canada's being bad. And this has happened any time in history where Canada has tried to make moves politically to actually separate itself from the UK or separate itself from the Commonwealth. The Governor General has stepped in and shut that shit down cold. I mean, everybody go home, you're done, bye, right? So it has happened. So basically, what you have, what they call Confederation, which took place in 1867 in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which I believe that's actually the date Prince Edward Island became a province as well. So I was a little off on that early in the video. In Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Confederation, the Bills of Confederation were signed. Sovereignty. When in actuality, what it was a British colony getting permission to self-govern within limits. Think of it as, you're a parent. Britain's the parent and Canada's the teenager, right? The parent and the child. So you give your child permission to go out, hang around with their friends, make their own decisions within reason. Stay out past curfew once in a while, things like this, right? But the moment that teenager gets out of line, it's back in line, right? Smarten up, backhander. And that is what it is. So the history books, the official history books, like the day Canada is a country, that we became a country in 1867, blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. It's not true. And you can tell just by who our head of state is. If we were a sovereign nation, our head of state would be our own elected prime minister. And it's that damn simple. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Bye.